Okay, so we are live. I'm Scott with CircWorks. I'm here with Jeff Lafferty, and unfortunately Kevin couldn't make it today. Something kind of came up last minute, which is kind of a bummer because it's episode 50, so it would be cool to have everyone here. So I don't know, maybe we should just call this like episode 49 and a half and then do 50 next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hopefully Kevin will be back next week and everything. He went. I know he went out and celebrated his birthday, so I kind of wanted to see how that went. But you know, we'll catch up with him next week. So because of that, Kevin was supposed to host, so we didn't really have a topic planned. So we're just going to kind of wing it, like what we did last week. I asked for some questions, so if you guys have questions in the chat, let us know. But first, I know you had something you wanted to talk about, but there was something that I wanted to kind of bring up first.
Okay.
Might kind of get things started here. So did you happen to see that viral? I think it went viral. It seemed like it got a lot of hits. I don't know what viral is in this scope of things, but that Jake Parker video. Did you happen to see that?
I sure didn't. What is it?
Okay, so it's kind of basically the title of it was Finished Not Perfect, and I know we've kind of talked about this before. I've always kind of used the phrase "perfection is the enemy of done," but it was really cool. It was just like a short video that kind of you put on like Facebook or whatever, and it kind of it kind of went viral. But it was really nicely produced, and I followed Jake Parker for a while, and in addition to being like a really great artist in my opinion. And just giving out great advice. One of the things, he's just this, watching this video, it just reminds me, and I'm always kind of aware of this when I watch his stuff, everything he's doing, but he really is like a great marketer as well. He's really good at, putting like these things together and just building this following and everything. So, I'm kind of trying to do stuff like that. Like I'm kind of in the middle of putting together a video myself, just a quick little video, because I told you guys last week that I'm setting up my Etsy store and everything. But one of the things they allow you to do now on Etsy is do like a little video, like a little store video. Just kind of introduce yourself, who you are, what you do. So I just want to do like a quick little 2-minute video that kind of shows what I do and the process real quickly and stuff like that. So, but stuff like that, I think people are interested in seeing in these little quick videos, things that you can, because we do videos on YouTube all the time, but at least me, I don't usually post a lot of that stuff to Facebook or like do special stuff to Facebook or produce something just to kind of send it out there, or use video for other things other than YouTube. So that's something I want to try to do. I want to start putting more like videos on my blog, and which really is kind of non-existent. I haven't updated it in forever, but I do want to start driving more traffic to the website. And, I'm really trying to focus on all this, all this different stuff to try to, once I get these online stores back up, to try to get people to go check that out and hopefully get to a point where I can kind of stay on top of it. And I'm really thinking about, actually like writing down, because I kind of, talking about like winging it, like this show, that's kind of lately what I've been doing just with the business. There's just so much stuff. It's just like, take your pick. I need to get this done, but I think I really need to, once I get these first few, kind of things in order with the store and everything. And when I start to try to drive traffic to that, I really want to, write out like, this is what I'm going to do in a week. I'm going to, post this many, things on Pinterest, or, share this many things, or just really, make an effort to let people know that I'm out here making artwork, and hopefully it'll, bring more traffic and everything, and hopefully build the audience. So,
yeah, definitely. That thing you said, though, kind of caught my attention. So you don't actually repost your videos from YouTube to Facebook?
You know what? I don't. I sometimes I do, but I haven't really done it lately.
Yeah, I always do.
Yeah.
Why not?
That's kind of a good question. Some of them are kind of long. I did a couple weeks ago. I did like a Facebook live stream. And it got a lot of engagement, so I want to start doing more of that type of stuff. I guess I'm thinking just the YouTube comments to me, it seems like YouTube content seems like YouTube content. And then it seems like the Facebook stuff is something different. I don't know. I guess I don't picture people. I don't know, because I used to like, I would post my videos to the Artcasters, which I really need to do, the Artcasters Facebook page. I don't know. I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at, is these are things that I should be doing that I kind of stopped doing and need to get back to. So
I do that kind of thing where I have a list. I mean, I am big, like, because to me, like, YouTube is always kind of like that, and my blog are kind of like my main where I post, and then like everything else, like Facebook or Twitter or Tumblr or anything else is all pretty much just a repost of my content. But it's I look at it like people that follow me in those places, they follow me just because that's kind of their favorite place to watch. And
right.
You know what I mean? It's like I don't really think up specific things on Twitter. I just kind of like repost like my videos there. And I don't know. I do have like a list I go down. Like every time I do a blog post, I just hit all that stuff. It takes like about an hour and a half, and then I forget about it. But it's a good way to do it, I think. Yeah.
But it's weird because I definitely understand what you mean, but it seems like, the main kind of the big social media platforms, they all kind of have their own thing. And it seems to me like some content works better for certain things. So, but it's almost impossible to cater, something to each one. So while I can see myself wanting to do certain things just that would work more towards Facebook, like this video I saw. And if you go like search it on Facebook, or just, I think it's on Jake Parker's website, you'll see it. But it's just a short little video, but it's very well produced and everything, and just kind of inspirational, telling people, just do something. Don't, don't procrastinate. It's never going to be perfect. And what you do now, if it's perfect to you right then, a year from now, it's not going to be perfect. So why bother with that? You just keep doing, and the more you do, you get better. I mean, which is a great message, and I've kind of always shared that same opinion. So, but I agree with that
wholeheartedly, for sure.
Yeah, and it's there's a lot. I think you never. I don't know.
What? You're never as good as you want to be. Is that kind of what you mean? Like you're never ready to like make that.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that all that pride and everything you take in your work, it's almost more like a fear of getting something done rather than I want this to be perfect. It's more like I'm afraid to do this because I'm afraid of like actually completing something. I'm afraid of rejection, or afraid of putting something out there in the world. Sometimes a lot of people like, I've got to do this and all this stuff first, which, I kind of just mentioned earlier that I was doing that sort of with the store, trying to get the store all ready. Hopefully that's a different scenario, because I don't think of myself as somebody that kind of does that, at least with artwork. But
yeah, I've really felt it lately, which I feel like I've kind of gotten over it with my artwork a little bit. And I'm a little bit more like, it is what it is. But like recently with the Kickstarter book, like when I was putting that together, oh my God, I was just stressing out and just really dragging my feet. Like, when I was designing the book, because it's like a book, for some reason that's like, seems more real than just all the junk I put on the internet. You know what I mean? And I was just struggling through that. And I almost kind of had to come to that same kind of realization where I'm just like, no, it just needs to be done. It doesn't need to be like everything of all time. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, so I still have that in me for sure,
Yeah. And if you're trying to get something perfect, okay, say you get it to as perfect as you can get it, you've got like one thing, whereas you could have done a bunch of things and learned a lot more and have a bunch of things to show for. And maybe they're not perfect, but the next thing will be better than that. And the next thing will be better than that. And you'll have, it'll just constantly grow. So I do like that message, and it's something, and it's a lot of, and to me, it's like, I've had that opinion for so long that to me, it's almost like second nature. But I know there's a lot of people always have that, those questions when like they're starting out, or they're struggling, or they're, they just can't, some of the questions I had, one of them was, how do you, there were a couple that sounded like the same question, but they're actually different. So one of them was, how do you keep motivated? And the other one was, how do you find inspiration? So I guess those are different, but
yeah,
I don't know. What do you think as far as how do you stay motivated?
Stay motivated, man. That's so tough. Like for me, see, there's like two sides of it, because I feel like I'm kind of like my business is kind of diverging as I'm going into like the stop motion animation thing. And that is where I'm like completely motivated and inspired, right now. And then like where I'm having a little bit of a tough time to stay motivated is actually with the art and doing commissions and stuff. And I try to like not let myself get out of the routine. I don't know if this is like motivation or just keeping myself stuck with it. You know what I mean? But I'm like really trying to like stay focused on keeping a schedule. So like I sit down at a certain time and then I get up at a certain time, so that I got my, 8 hours of drawing in every day. And what else am I doing? It's just, that is a lot of it. You know what I mean? Just trying to keep me locked in there. So like, I don't know if that answers the question. That probably doesn't. Like,
no, I think it does. So yeah. As far as now, because you're saying you're way more kind of motivated to do the stop motion stuff, but because the commissions and everything are what's paying the bills, to me, part of my motivation is I don't like to let people down. And if I say I'm going to do something, or if I, then I want to get that done and I want to deliver it, on time and everything. And to me, that's a big motivator, because I want kind of my word to be my bond. So if I say, yeah, I'll get you this artwork, or yeah, I'm gonna put my store up this month, and I'll throw that out there that by the middle of this month, my stores will be up and everything. So I'll put that out there, because that's definitely going to happen. It'll make it happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's part of my motivation, is just kind of doing what I say I'm going to do. And as far as just along the way and creating things, I genuinely enjoy it. Now, as far as to kind of go back to the other question, as far as the inspiration, that's sometimes when I have the problem. I've got a big, like, anytime I come up with an idea or something, I've just got this Evernote list of just, all these ideas I have for prints and things like that. Like this one that I'm working on right now. It's kind of like this hipster robot guy. And I've got a kind of a caption and everything in mind for it, and I'll sell it as a card or whatever. But I've just got a list of these, so I can kind of go back and pull from them. So that's helpful. But sometimes when I just want to sit down and do a sketch, it's like, what do I sketch? Or like coming up with the gesture or the pose, and that's where I kind of struggle. So at least for inspiration, a lot of times I'll turn to like Pinterest, and I'll search, like if I'm doing search robots or mechs and stuff like that, and get ideas from that, or but But I don't know. Inspiration's a
other artists are. Yeah, other artists are definitely a good source of inspiration. I still get that bump when I see somebody that's really talented, and it's like, oh, that looks so good. Makes you want to try to do what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
And I know, like, I'm gonna probably be doing Inktober in a couple months, and that's always hard to come up with. What am I going to draw today, and all that. Yeah. So they do now. I know that. I think. Again, Jake Parker, who started Inktober, I think he's putting up like a list. So if you can't think of anything, you just go and there's art prompts. And there's those, if anyone's ever trouble trying to figure out what to draw, there's all kinds of art prompts online. Just type in art prompts and they'll give you ideas of what to draw. So, but sometimes it's not that easy, because what to draw and how to draw it are two different things,
Yeah, that's actually a good thing to bring up, though, because that's sort of like a challenge. And I think that like challenges, things like the writer community has that NaNoWriMo or something, where they try to write a novel in like November or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like anything like that, or even like the 100 Days of Comics, like you guys, 100 videos in 100 days. That's motivation. Once you kind of put it out there, you don't want to fail in front of everybody. You know what I mean? So if you don't mind that kind of like pressure, because I know that kind of sucks sometimes, but it can be good too if you're having a problem, getting yourself to sit down and do stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll have to check back to the chat, but yeah, there's questions. But
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, but we're kind of going to be all over the place, I think, on this but you had mentioned something about YouTube that I didn't know anything about. So yeah. I don't know if you want to explain that so I can figure it out, and anyone that's watching, maybe they know something about it, or maybe they haven't heard anything about it. But
well, I keep hearing it on different live shows. They keep bringing it up. I think the first time I heard it was on Jersey's show, Lean Into Art or whatever they call it. And they were talking about Google getting rid of the Google Hangouts and switching it to where like everybody's got to go to YouTube to like live stream. And they were kind of like talking about like what they're going to do when that happens. And then Peter brought it up on his show, Peter Palmiotti, and I heard them talking about it. And then I remembered, and I started to research it, but it's like, it's hard to figure out what to research there, because it's like, how do you even like phrase what the hell they're talking about? You know what I mean?
I've been there with things before.
But I did want to bring it up on the show because I already asked you if you knew anything about it, and you said no. And I just kind of wanted to throw it out there to the chat too, if they know anything about it. But like what I think's going to happen, I think like everybody's kind of got the perspective that like when they take away the Google Hangouts, it's like the thing we're doing right now is going to go away. But you can still go to YouTube. I mean, like the way we start the Hangouts is we actually start it in YouTube. We don't go to like a Google Hangout page and start it. You know what I mean? Right. And I think that's actually what's going to happen. It's just the page is going to go away and the Hangouts are going to stay on YouTube. But I'm not 100% sure because YouTube also has this thing that it's called like YouTube Live or something like that. And it seems to be like more of like a streaming type service where like when I used to stream on Picardo, you have to have like a I don't know what it is, but it's like a program that helps the stream go faster. So I used like XSplit, and then there's like other ones, kind of like the Flash Media Player and stuff that you've got to like stream through to get onto, Picardo. And they have something set up like that on YouTube. You've actually, a couple times when we couldn't get the show going, you actually went into that side of it and we're like stuck in there, and that's why we couldn't get the stream going, But I'm not sure that's gonna be the only option. I kind of hope not, but I just was kind of curious, like if anybody in the chat knew anything about it either.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see any comments, but it doesn't seem like it makes sense for them to have you need to download extra like software to do. I don't know.
I don't know why they would mess it up. I mean, it seems to be working fine, but who knows with Google.
Well, yeah, and I don't know about how everyone else uses it. Like you said, we kind of use it probably the way that they're talking about. So hopefully it won't affect us too much, but I don't know how other people use it. But I don't really, because I think before, and the only reason we did that was so that we could have the chat, because that's the only way that you can have the chat is if you set it up through YouTube. But other than the chat, I don't know that there's any differences to me. I don't notice any differences as far as like the performance or the end result. Do you?
Well, no. I wonder if they just want rid of like that part in Google Plus. You know what I mean? Because I don't know that Google Plus is going to go away, but it's obviously dead. You know what I mean? Maybe everybody just sets their show up through YouTube and they don't bother to go over there and like set up that page. Because remember how we used to, like when we very, very first started setting up the show, we used to have like a Google Plus page and everybody was supposed to go there and tell people if they're going to come or not.
Oh, yeah.
All that stuff. Yeah. So I don't know, but that was my take on it. I thought I'd just put it out there for anybody else listening, because it seems like everybody's like panicking, and I'm just really curious, because it's like I haven't heard anything straight from YouTube where it's like this is going to go away, but who knows?
Yeah, it's just, to me, it's too great of a service to get rid of it. Now they may try to improve it or change it, but I can't see them getting rid of it, because I guess there's some other options, but really, I mean, the Google Hangouts have to be a big thing for Google and for YouTube. I mean, so.
Oh yeah, you see them all over the place.
So.
And Nick Bernstein in the chat says, I think it's just the Google Hangouts events page. I suppose he just means that's going to go away. That's kind of my take on it. That's kind of what I bet's going to happen. But, like I haven't went over there to set up the show for so long. It's like I don't even, you know what I mean, pay attention to what's going on in Google+. I wouldn't even have a Google+ if they didn't make you have one.
Yeah. I haven't been on Google+ really in forever, but I did like it better than Facebook, but it's just, as far as the interface and everything, but that's not where the people are. So you kind of got to go. It's like Facebook, you got this love-hate relationship with Facebook, but that's where everyone is. So you kind of have to use it. But I really like, as far as love-hate, I mean, a lot of stuff I don't like about Facebook, but I really do. I did really like doing those Facebook live streams. So
yeah,
there's a lot of, again, but it's all boiled down to the audience. That's where you can reach a pretty big audience, because I could do a Periscope or something like that, but it's kind of hard to build that audience. And the other thing that's like, I know you're not on Instagram, but Instagram started rolling out basically Instagram stories, which is pretty much like Snapchat. So,
I heard that.
So I don't know what that's going to take away from Snapchat, because I started doing Snapchat. I haven't really done it much lately. I haven't really done the Instagram stories either. But to me, I think I might like the Instagram stories a little better. One, because it's very difficult to build an audience on Snapchat. That's part of the problem. But the other thing is, it's Snapchat's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of weird. They got all these weird filters, and it's just kind of goofy stuff that I suppose is fun and everything. But if you want to, for me, I kind of want to do it for business and do serious things, like show people kind of like mini vlogs, which I really like about it. But it seems like the crowd, they want the little filters that you put on yourself to make you look like a dog, or all these kind of weird things. And so, that's why I don't know. I'll probably still continue to do Snapchat, but I'm wondering how much of an effect that's going to have on that platform now that Instagram's kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point.
So
it might take it out. Who knows? I still have not even got over to Snapchat. I guess it's just because I'm not like a big phone user or something. I did go to Instagram today just to kind of look around, and I don't know. It's still confusing to me. But I went on my wife's smartphone, so I guess if I had a phone, I'd probably goof around there all the time. But
yeah, I mean, definitely Instagram. I don't know that you would dig Snapchat. It's just really the only audience you have on Snapchat is kind of what you bring yourself. It doesn't like really, as far as I can tell, it doesn't like just natively like grow. Like it's not easy to find people on there. So
I wonder about that with a lot of like platforms. Just how many of them do, just because it seems like everybody is everywhere. You know what I mean? It's like the people I know on Facebook are the same people that watch my videos. Right. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it doesn't seem to be like a gigantic shift of audience. So I wonder if you just made videos that didn't spread it anywhere, if you'd end up with just the same audience that you would do if you did spread it everywhere. I don't know.
I mean, some people, it just seems like, because I'm on all these different things, that I kind of figure other people are on everything, but no, some people are on certain things. So it doesn't hurt to kind of spread yourself out. It's just kind of weird that like some of the, like, whether you're like Facebook or Instagram, who's owned by Facebook. I mean, they just steal somebody else's idea and put it into their like program, and then they've got the audience. So like whether it's Pinterest, not Pinterest, but whether they kind of take like a Snapchat and put it in Instagram, or they take a Periscope and put it on Facebook.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's true. I noticed a couple people in there, because but before we get off that, I was just gonna say, we're like artists that sell our work, which I know there's a lot of artists that watch the show, but not everybody is selling their stuff. Some people are just fans that buy and stuff. So like, it's more, I mean, I think that drives us to jump onto every platform, what I mean? Yeah. Whereas I think just more like normal people, they kind of pick where they like, and they hang out with their friends, and then that's kind of like their thing.
Yeah, and as far as like selling stuff, I mean, there's things that I've never even, tried out yet. Like I've never tried to sell anything on Amazon, and I've never tried to sell anything on eBay. I mean, not artwork anyway. And I know you've tried both of those things, so it's like, you know.
Yeah, sure. I sell on Amazon and eBay all the time. You should do it. It's easy. I mean, it's just another. Amazon's more confusing, but it's the same deal, and it's just more people to buy your stuff. So.
Now, do you have an Etsy store?
Yeah, Etsy's like my main store.
Oh,
I don't really tell anybody. Yeah, I don't really even tell anybody about Amazon. So that's all people that just find me.
Okay.
That marketplace. So.
Okay.
And then eBay, of course, everybody knows I'm on eBay.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this Etsy thing pans out because since you are on there, I mean, I've just done. I don't know how much research you've done as far as marketing your stuff and SEO and stuff, but I'm going to do when I get it all up. I'm going to do some videos and maybe give you some tips unless you already know all that stuff. I don't know.
That's okay. No, I'm always looking for more info. I've listened to a lot of the podcasts and stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I try to get it. I get excited about it for a while, and I kind of change things around, and it doesn't seem like with Etsy with me, it really seems to be like a fan. Like they come from my site, you know what I mean? Because it's like those links come from my site, and it seems like who I sell on Etsy are really like the people that are just my fans anyway. It doesn't seem to be like a lot of people from the outside. So I don't know if I could build that or like kind of got the feeling that more people were finding me through like keywords or something on that site, then I'd be all into it. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's kind of it's weird because I'm kind of looking at Etsy as sort of the opposite, like not driving traffic to Etsy, because I know you've had your issues with Store Envy and you know how to Store Envy store, but for me, I'd rather drive people to Store Envy because it doesn't cost me anything. Whereas Etsy, I think I can use that as a place where people can find, just because of the community there, that they can find my stuff,
Yeah.
And it is, some of it's sort of, hopefully it's kind of fits into that sort of crafty type thing. Because I do sell I sell like bow ties and I have some messenger bags and things like that I think are a little, closer to what a lot of the people at Etsy are looking for. So, but we'll see.
No, that's true. And you're right. I don't have anything against Store Envy. I think it's a great platform. I liked my Store Envy when I had it. But, I noticed in the chat, if you're like done talking about Etsy, like one guy, like somebody, Nick Bernstein said, discipline equals motivation. And then somebody else said underneath that, what about art sales killing motivation? To be like, that would raise my motivation. I think I don't understand what that means. Art sales.
Yeah, you might have to elaborate on that because I'm not really following it. Is it like the lack of sales killing motivation, or
that could
I don't know. You might want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, and then or go ahead.
I was just going to say, because that's that can be a big issue, because sometimes when things don't sell, you're like, does anybody like my stuff? That type of thing.
Yeah.
So that I can see kind of being difficult.
One thing I always take on the take when things don't sell, that, and I might be wrong, and maybe I'm just like lying to myself and keeping myself going, but I always put the take on it that like if it was out there in the right place or like enough places that it would sell. You know what I mean? It's just like any of us, if we could get on the front page of YouTube, if YouTube was stuck us on the front page or they stuck us in a sidebar, we get just as many hits as like, the biggest of the big YouTubers. And I really think it's the same with the art. I think if the art was on the front page of Etsy, you'd have like hundreds of thousands of sales. You know what I mean? It's just like getting there. And that is all marketing. That's figuring out like where to post it and how to get it in front of people's faces. And that's super hard to figure out.
Yeah, I totally agree, because like when I did these series of prints called Retroventions, and they were these small prints, like 8 by 10 or 8.5 by 11, somewhere around that scale. And a lot of the prints I had were like larger. But I did this series of small prints. Usually when I do small prints, it's because they're in a series or something like that. But they were basically just these crazy inventions that could never happen, like a rotary cell phone or something weird like that. So. But I had these prints, and I really dug them, and they just wouldn't sell. But like at the conventions, I would have them on my back wall, and I don't know, it's just because they're so small that people didn't really see them. I brought them up to the front and put them like where people could like flip through them, and then they started to sell. So a lot of times it's just like you said, it's kind of where you present it, and it's also finding that market, because the more and more I find that just my stuff isn't going to cater as much to the Comic-Con crowd.
Yeah.
But I find that my stuff really resonates with people like in tech or people in, or like sciences and things like that. And the few of those people that are actually at conventions, they eat it up. So, and I've talked about this before, but I need to get out to conventions where those people are congregating. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I thought that too, like, because like at that second convention I went to like a couple of years ago now, I guess, or maybe it was just the last year, I had like a back wall thing also. And I noticed, like, I thought that the stuff behind me didn't sell as well as, like, the stuff on my table. And I wasn't really sure, like, you know, it was just kind of like a hunch or something. But it seemed like when people could kind of gum up and, like, pick it up and look at it, it seemed they wanted to buy it more than, like, just, like, the print that was kind of up at the top corner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's weird because in as far as, like, if you go into a grocery store, it's like the products that sell the best are the ones that are right. You're not going to find them on the bottom shelf or the very top shelf, which kind of sucks for those places because it's almost like a catch-22 thing. If you can only get your stuff in the middle there if it sells well, and if it's in the middle, it'll sell better. So by moving the stuff that doesn't sell that well to the bottom, it's just going to sell worse, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like placement. So I guess you can equate that to when you put work out on the internet. It's got to be at a place where people can find it, you know, and the right people, not just anybody. Because a lot of times, you know, we market to, we're basically marketing to artists a lot of the time, and a lot of artists are in the same position we are. Like I can't afford to buy a lot of art prints, so you know, I mean, and they're kind of in that same position. So you got to kind of find the people that have the money to spend and stuff.
I think that's true. A lot of artists like watch other artists to kind of see what they're doing and get ideas to sell their own art, you know, not necessarily in a market for buying art. Yeah, that one guy said lack of sales was actually was the motivation thing, and that sucks. But I mean, you know, if that is like what's bumming you out, I mean, maybe, you know, maybe push more towards the marketing side of it. Look at it like more like that, because I mean, if that's all that's stopping you, I mean, that sucks. That's it. You know what I mean? That seems like a problem that maybe you can fix. So I don't know. Hopefully that motivation didn't piss you off. And then let's see. This guy Nick Bernstein says, "Why would I not be on Instagram?" I love the traditional artists over there. Yeah, I don't know. Instagram's like just been a thorn in my side. I don't know. I guess it's just because I don't have a smartphone, and I tried to like set up my account like a long time ago with my computer and like hack it in this certain way, and then it like didn't work. And eventually, I tried to set it up on my wife's phone, and it's just like a big hassle. The whole thing is just the phone thing. I think I just, you know, it's too much of a hassle.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do Instagram.
And I wonder too. Yeah. Sorry, dude. But I wonder too, like if everybody that I know is just going to go follow me on Instagram, I kind of don't. And then I feel like it's not worth it, because then it's like, you know, I already have everybody. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, why? Then I just got one more place I got to post. But it's just stupid. I should do it, I'm sure.
I'm gonna have to switch over I can't draw anything. Something happened to my tablet. It's not reacting to the pen, so the stylus. So I'll switch back to I guess I'll stop drawing.
Oh man. Is it all on like the same computer? Maybe Google Hangout's slowing you down.
I've never had that happen. It just stopped. Like I can run my stylus over, but the calibration's off. But I don't know if I can recalibrate it while I'm doing this. So I'll just wait. It's all right.
Yeah. So Nick says it's apparently really good for getting new followers. And yeah, you're probably right. I probably should try it again. I'm sure, you know, I'm just waiting until it's like almost over, and then I'm going to jump in. That's because that's like usually when I show up, like when everything's like just about dying. Let's see. And then that one guy says hasn't stopped me, but it kind of makes me feel like a bummer. And yeah, I know what you mean, man. So.
I did have a question. I think we may have answered this one before, but well, you know what? I got to go back because I forgot exactly how it was phrased. But I think it was. Let what comics influenced you to want to make comics? Was did we talk about that before? Probably.
We probably talked about influences, but I don't know if we really like specifically said comics. You want to try that one?
Yeah. You want to go first?
Sure. Let's see. Like my biggest influences to like make me want to do comics was like, I mean, it's all like when you're a kid, which is weird. You know, it's like that teenage years. It just seems to be like it defines your taste, and then like nothing ever is good and as good as that stuff ever again. It's weird. So maybe it's just like the place you are in life, or I don't know, because I doubt like the comics I was reading back then are like, you know, any better than like the ones they're doing now. But like Savage Sword of Conan, that was like huge. The Spirit was like big. I mean, like all of the ones that really like inspired me to do comics were like the black and white like magazine type comics that were on the magazine shelves, like at 7-Eleven, like eerie, creepy, Savage Sword of Conan, heavy metal, Epic Illustrated. Like that was like just, you know, I was just so into that stuff and just loved that style, loved that inking style, loved the black and white work. And, you know, the artists were like all the artists in there, like Mobius, Bernie Wrightson, you know, Jumbo Schema. Those were like my guys. So that's like the short answer. What about you, dude?
So for me, I think the first artist that I ever, you know, kind of noticed as far as the style and everything was John Byrne, but I don't know if I'd necessarily say he was an influence of mine. Yeah. I think it was probably when kind of Art Adams came on the scene, or maybe before that, like George Perez. But I never really tried to like draw like George Perez. I don't know what it was. Maybe his stuff was just too intimidating because there were just so many characters. But I remember when I first started trying to draw like superheroes and stuff. My big go-to was like the DC's Who's Who or the Marvel Universe. So I would look at the poses and I try to draw, you know, the characters, but then I put my own, you know, I put my own costumes and stuff on them and stuff like that. So, and that was just various different artists that would do those. But Art Adams, and then I mean, there's just so many artists, and you would think like little bit of each artist like would seep into your DNA somehow. Like when Sienkiewicz when he first kind of started to notice him, I started to try to do some crazy stuff like that. But you know, I was nowhere near that because it wasn't. A lot of it wasn't like painted like what he did or anything. So, and then I don't know. It's difficult to say. There's just I just jump back and forth through so many different artists, but I probably I don't know. I really gravitate toward like Art Adams stuff. You know, there was a lot of detail and stuff, but it didn't seem like, you know, Todd McFarlane type detail that was just there, like it kind of looked busy. It looked like every single line kind of made sense to me, I guess. So I mean, that was probably that would be like my go-to influence. But and then, you know, like you said, Wrightson I always dug, but his stuff was, you know, again, it seems so unattainable, I guess. Not that I don't want to say like Art Adams stuff isn't good, so anyone could do it, which, you know, but I don't know, something about it, you know, I guess I could kind of see how I could adapt it or try to do something. Maybe it was the subject matter was more at that time was more into like superheroes necessarily than the horror stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I loved Art Adams' work, and also Michael Golden, which you remind me a lot of Michael Golden. So. Yeah, and the thing I like about Michael Golden was his stuff was it was kind of like Art Adams, but with sort of a Disney-esque, like there was some just the emotions and stuff in the characters. Like Art Adams didn't have that those expressions and stuff like Golden had. Like it was almost kind of odd because when I first noticed Golden. Other than maybe I know he did some stuff with like G.I. Joe, but was the Nam, and that was such like a serious story. And I remember some people complaining because his characters are kind of cartoony in a way for such a serious story. But I think it just when you're dealing with subject matter like that, the emotions and the reactions and stuff on the characters' faces, Yeah.
it really, I think, helps that storytelling, because there's great artists out there like Jim Lee's a great artist, but his his characters don't really have that kind of emotion in their face. They all kind of look the same, so there's artists like that. And Art Adams kind of somewhere in that where I wouldn't say all his characters look the same, but they just don't have as much expression. So it's kind of like when Image came out, and then it was kind of that same thing with the Jim Lee's and stuff like that. But then when like J. Scott Campbell came out, and he looked like he kind of came from this animation background, and then again he was kind of the same thing where there's so much expression and stuff. And when I first picked up I think the first thing I picked up from him, I forgot what it was, but whatever he did first, I'm like looking at him I'm like, this is really awesome. And of course he blew up after that. But the problem was at that time he was like inking his own stuff, and the inking looked garbage. He's way better having somebody else ink his stuff, because the inking looked really bad. But if you look past that, you really see these expressions and these characters and stuff. So that's something I wish I could do a lot better, is just the character. And then and that's where a lot of animators really benefit from having that kind of education on how to get expressions and stuff. That's something I should study a little more on.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think that's big. I mean, when you think about like Art Adams on the NAM or whatever. I can't remember what it's called.
That was Golden. Michael Golden, you mean?
Oh, Michael Golden. Yeah, like it kind of reminds me of like a lot of the guys who were kind of cartoony, like Harvey Kurtzman when he was doing like the World War II comics and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
It's like the same thing. It's like they're cartoony, but man, they just have such like emotional weight, to it, that like so much more than just, I don't know, more like, they make it more realistic, I guess, than just like, spaceships fighting each other and stuff. So
yeah.
So somebody says biggest influence was X-Men #1, Jim Lee. That must have been when they rebooted X-Men.
Yeah, and I was one of those suckers that bought every single cover to that thing.
Well, Jim Lee is like a really good artist.
Yeah.
I mean, just like such slick look to his work.
Yeah,
it's incredible. It's
like I've heard how people equate Jim Lee is that he's an excellent draftsman, because I mean, he is like his line work and everything but again it's almost like the issue that John Byrne had, where his characters just there wasn't that varied expression. A lot of his characters kind of looked the same, even like in his kids. I remember his kids always looked like he just shrunk down an adult head and put it on a kid. They didn't look like kids, the proportion. Usually when you draw a kid, their head's a little bigger than, in proportion to the rest of the body and stuff like that. I remember whenever you drew kids, it just looked like this little tiny guy.
Yeah, I totally remember that. Almost like you couldn't tell like the kids from like, like the midgets or whatever. You know what I mean? Because like I don't know. Somebody else in there said so Morgan Moore said Jack Kirby, Alex Toth, Mobius, Hugo Pratt, and Adam Warren. There's some good ones in there.
Oh yeah.
Alex Toth,
I mean the Johnny Quest stuff and all that.
Blows my mind, yeah. He even did some like stuff in like the Savage Sword of Conan back in the day. I remember seeing some pinups and stuff. Which I've never actually been able to find those again. I'm sure I could find them easily with a web search, but
well, since we're talking about kind of our what inspired us, like we're going way back. One of the questions I had was, how has your art evolved? So I don't know if that's because I know. I mean, obviously the stuff I'm working on now is like totally different than the stuff I was into back when I was a kid. I wanted to do superheroes and all that kind of stuff. And now that's kind of, I enjoy watching superhero movies and like looking at the comics and stuff like that. But I don't really have a desire to like tell a superhero story.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, I guess a lot of it just has to do with different, like, I don't know, jobs or projects I've had along the way that kind of drove me in certain directions into kind of what I do now. And I'm trying to remember how I kind of first stumbled on this idea of this mad scientist thing. I think what it was I've always had that sort of, that theme to my website where it's kind of that Rube Goldberg-esque kind of weird contraptions and everything.
Yeah.
And then I remember Daniel Davis, who runs Steam Crow, was putting together that Keen Halloween convention.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to exhibit there. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, how does, I don't know if my work actually, if it fits into like a Halloween type aesthetic. So I'm trying to think with, these weird contraptions, how does that look Halloweeny? And I think I was thinking, well, instead of a factory, what if it's more like a laboratory? And then I started to, and this is kind of, I guess, some good advice to artists who are trying to build a brand. Figure out what you love, all the things you love, and how they can fit together. And so that's what I started really doing. I like classic, like Universal horror and stuff like that, like Frankenstein and stuff like that. And there's, Frankenstein, obviously it's a monster story, but it's also a science fiction story. So a lot of science fiction, I like, obviously like geeky type stuff. I like, I don't know, just so many different, like, just influences and things I like. And I just trying to figure out how to put them all together so they made sense together. And that's kind of when I came across with this mad scientist vibe. And then, the tagline kind of, it's robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. So I like to do zombies, and zombies kind of usually are born from some kind of scientific mishap. I like to draw robots. Robots are creations of science. Aliens, abductions, and things like that. That's scientific research that, whether you're in a laboratory and you have something from Area 51 that you're trying to recreate or what's that called when you
reanimate?
Not reanimate, but when you take technology and you try to find out how it was created. There's a word for that. It's not coming to me right now. Yeah. You know what I mean? Anyway.
It's not re-engineer, is it?
Re-engineer, yes, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's close enough anyway. If that's not it,
yeah.
But yeah. So all this stuff could be stuff that would come out of a mad scientist lab. So and there are a few projects that I did that I was working on that just didn't fit the mold. And even though I enjoyed it, I kind of, like, there was a children's book I was working on. It was more about a family vacation and all the crazy things that happened. And I had it written and everything, and I had it all, fairly, like, I had a dummy book and it was all mapped out. But I kind of just put it aside just because it didn't fit. And so sometimes you have to sacrifice certain things like that. But for me, branding's a big thing. So that's kind of, as far as, what was the question? How has your artwork evolved? So I think just finding out how to, create an umbrella around all the things I love, that kind of helped my stuff to get to the point to where it is now. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I think it does. It's like kind of like the way you found, like, especially the mad scientist thing. So
yeah, we got the comment reverse engineering. So yeah.
Or reverse engineering, yeah.
Now, what did you say?
Oh, maybe that is what I said. I don't know. For some reason, it didn't sound right when I said it. I'm like, that's not it.
Maybe you said re-engineer.
I said re-engineer. That's what I said.
Yeah, reverse engineering is what I meant.
So myself, as far as like how my art's changed, man, it's just because I feel like it's just changed like so much, from like what I was trying to do like in the beginning to like what I ended up doing. Because I started out trying to do comics, so it was all black and white, like inked work, and it wasn't very realistic. That was the other thing. I always had this sort of realism style that I kind of learned like in high school from our art teacher. She was like, try to draw a picture, try to draw this and that, and then I kind of really took to it because I could do it easily. But like I had like on the other side, I have this like second style. Like my whole life, I've always had the second thing where it was just like more I don't know about cartoony, but just more like comic booky kind of stuff I was just making up out of my head. And that was always like what I, was really pushing to like get into comics with that stuff. And, was just really into it. And like I said, I just inked, for like the longest time till I was in my 30s, just all black and white inked work. And then, I kind of, when I found like Drew Struzan, actually, like the poster artist, I saw him painting, and then it was like, I, just looked at the way he painted, and I was like, I want to try that. And then I just started painting from there on. And then it's like my work just started to go towards that realism after that, even though I would also paint sometimes in that other style, it just, man, that realism just kind of like took over. And then what really kind of sealed the deal was like when I started selling art online. As soon as I started selling art, the first pieces I sold was just like realistic pieces. That's what people wanted. They were all nudes. And I sold a bunch of those and kind of got bored with that and like started to look around and, realized like back then it was sketch cards was like what was selling. So I was like, I can do some of these sketch cards. There was all these like Lord of the Rings sketch cards and stuff selling. So I started drawing those and selling those. And of course, everybody wants like realism. So it just like really cemented it towards the realistic side, even though like sometimes I still get that wild hair and once in a while I'll scribble out, something out of my head. But that was, I guess the market shaped me in a way, more than anything.
I mean, so
go ahead.
I was just going to ask if there are any like major like discoveries along the way that might like totally change the way you looked at art or how you created. Like for me, like you mentioned inking, that was a big thing for me when I just kind of just sat down for days just practicing inking. And it's not, anyone who's new to inking can tell you it's not that easy, to kind of get a handle of it, especially when I tried like the curl quill and stuff, and I could never get the handle of that, but just even the brush, I mean, getting the handle of how to use that. But once I did it, that was like that kind of opened some major doors for me. But I don't know if there's anything like that for you, that like a certain painting technique that you discovered along the way that just kind of wow, that type of thing.
The inking, I remember like that same kind of thing. Like when I was trying to learn how to ink, and you try to ink your drawing and you just mess it up. You draw another one, mess that up. And it was like, man, seemed like there was like 6 months of just like messed up drawings. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where you're just like wrecking everything that you draw because you can't do it. And I agree with that. It like takes like just practice and like just flat out practice. And I was always like inking with a brush. I picked that up pretty quick. I tried the crow quill and the stuff in the beginning, but I just couldn't get what I wanted out of it. And then I went to a brush and it seemed to work for me. Like big, like lights on moments. I think like the one I remember was like painting mainly. And just like when I was looking at Drew Struzan and his technique and the way he would paint a drawing. Because I always painted, I just always paint, there's still some videos even like on my channel. If you go back, you can find some of my oil paintings where I would just like go into it straight with oil. I wouldn't do any kind of drawing. I wouldn't put any kind of like thing to hang the piece on. And I think that works. It has like a totally different feel to it and everything, which I like, but it's just completely different. But like, I just never really thought about like the way like Struzan especially like paints, where he basically, it's almost like a tinted drawing. And it kind of turned me on to like, that's sort of like an old master's kind of technique, like the glazes of oil. And, like the opaque whites and, everything dark is like transparent. And it's all over very, very, very tight drawing. That was definitely like one of those moments where I'm like, oh, now I kind of understand the way a lot of other people do it, which I've adopted, of course. I don't know, like, like other than that, I remember like going out to San Diego the first time and actually seeing like real comic book art.
Yeah.
Like, because people sell pages out there, and seeing like Jack Kirby pages and stuff, or John Buscema pages, and being like, oh my, just how freaking better they look than even when they're printed.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it's almost like you can't believe that somebody did them. And I remember seeing like a Simon Bisley painting out there and just being like, how does anybody paint like that, you know? And I don't know, just like being like, okay, my bar just went up, like, you know, however many notches, now I've got to do that. You know what I mean? But that was an eye opener. But it wasn't really like understanding a technique at that point.
Yeah, I remember that too. There was before I did first go out to San Diego, there was out by the job that I worked out. There was like a comic book art gallery. The guy just dealt with comic book art, and this was back before, you know, it was like the first time I've ever seen anything like this, or even heard of people selling comic book artwork. This guy was kind of at the forefront, I guess. But you can go in there and you could see all this stuff. I mean, a lot of it was also, I think at that time I was trying to do, this must have been after art school. But in art school, I did some airbrushing and stuff like that. But they had, I forgot I think his name is Paul Mounts. Are you familiar with him?
Oh, yeah, I know who that is. Yeah.
So he did a lot of the promotional like stuff for Marvel. And he was like, he did like airbrush. And what they would do is like, it almost like they had a transparency of the ink work. And then he would airbrush like under it. Like, and then they just lay that on top of it. So it's probably, you know, I don't know exactly how it, you know, he knew what was going on, if he was going off of pencils or something, or the inks separately or what, or I don't even know if he did the whole thing or if he just did the airbrush. But it was really cool to see that. And you can get up and you could physically see, because when you're looking at it, just like, it looks like nowadays, if you look at something, it looks like it's done on the computer all clean. But when you're right there, you can kind of see how it works. Same thing with all the, just the regular inked pages. You can see all the mistakes and the whiteout and all that kind of stuff, and the paste ups and all that stuff. So, I mean, it is weird, because just seeing that stuff, like you said, it makes it so real. It makes it like, this is something you can actually do, and this is how you do it. Whereas before you could not see that, you know? Yeah, absolutely. And you couldn't even really find a lot of like artwork, because a lot of times I'm more partial to like black and white stuff. So, and sometimes, especially early in comics, because the coloring techniques in comics back then weren't what they are now. So it's almost like, an insult to this line art when they add these, you know, half-tone dots and this. I mean, now you look back and it's cool because it's pop and it's you know, all that. But back then, I mean, this beautiful artwork, and like you said, it just, when it's printed on this pulpy paper and the printing techniques aren't that great, it just loses so much. But when you see that black and white at full size, you know, it's just like, wow, you know? Yeah. I know, it just blows your mind. I remember seeing some Mobius art that was like that, where it was like a transparency, like almost like an animation cell, but not painted on the back. There was like a painting underneath it, and then the transparency basically laid over top. And that's how like the ink lines were on top of like this thick wash paint, or, you know, whatever he was using. And that was really interesting. And I remember Sean did some like coloring for Marvel and stuff, and he was airbrush. I don't remember if he did it that way or not, but he was like airbrushing color in. That was right at the beginning of like when the computer coloring just barely was starting. You know what I mean? Yeah, because at that time I was developing that children's show, and and I was doing some airbrush, and I would just do it with like the frisket and everything. Yeah, and that was really weird. That was a weird thing to work with, because I don't know if you ever did any of that, or if you only do like freehand airbrush, but I've used frisket before, but not probably to like your extent, what you're going to tell me. Yeah, but I was illustrating the cover for our VHS tape, because this was way back in the day. Cool. This thing was because of VHS tape. Imagine that size, but this thing was probably like, oh geez, it was probably 30 by 40 or something actual size. He shrunk it down to that size of a VHS tape. But anyway, so it was so weird working that with, because you don't know what you have no idea what you're working on actually looks like until you pull all this stuff off. So you're just kind of hoping and praying that when you pull all this stuff off, it's going to look good, because you basically take an X-Acto knife and you cut each shape out, and then you do your airbrush, then you put that shape back on like a little puzzle, and then when you're done, you pull the whole thing off. And it actually looked pretty decent when I was done, but it's just a weird thing to work, because there isn't that gratification until you pull that off, and you just hope that it looks good. So
yeah, I remember when I first was trying to learn how to airbrush. I mean, Sean did it, so he knew how to do it, and like that's kind of the way he was showing me in the beginning. And like the Frisket thing was just like so mind-boggling, because just like you said, like when you mask over part of your painting, you can't see, like you can see through it, but you can't really like match the colors together. It's sort of just, you're just guessing that you're like right on it, and yeah, it's just really hard to get your mind wrapped around that.
Yeah.
All that stuff's gone, though, I think. I mean, I guess there's probably still airbrush guys that do it, but...
well, yeah, especially if you're doing it on like a physical object, but even like people like Jay Ferguson, I mean, he's he doesn't use Frisket at all. Everything's all freehand. He's amazing.
Well, I've never seen anything like that before,
No.
Yeah. So, I noticed... H.C. Brown was, she was saying that she didn't recognize any of the people we were talking about.
Well, she's younger.
Yeah. Who are you into, though, like H.C.? I mean, who is popular? I mean, who are people into like these days, I wonder?
I know she's not into superhero comics.
Oh, she's not?
No, she's more into like, I guess she's big into animation. I think she said once on her show that she doesn't even watch anything live action. Everything she watches is animated.
Oh, really? Wow. That's cool. Yeah, I guess a lot of younger kids are like anime, because I do get that, like especially when I go to cons and you talk to people and they start throwing out their, who they're into, and you're kind of like, well, it's I remember Akira.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool looking anime stuff, though.
Currently, like the stuff I like kind of that fusion. Like, so there's I don't know if it's a guy. I think it's like a studio, but it's either one guy or it's a studio. But it's Guri Huru. Now I pronounce it wrong. Guri Huru. But whether it's one person or two people or whatever, or a studio, but that I really dig that stuff. I also like Sean Galloway stuff. I really like the kind of the fusion of East meets West and stuff like that, or like just what you would see like on Avatar: The Last Airbender or stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'd have to talk to my son about like pure anime and stuff like that, but yeah, because I still like cartooniness. So I know like a lot of anime has kind of that over exaggerated emotion where instead of just weeping, it's just everything's kind of overdone.
Yeah, it's like the sprinkler tears.
It's kind of like that cartoon shorthand, but animated. Yeah. So.
Yeah. She says I like some superheroes. I like Becky Cloonan. Pretty much the superhero nerds only like comics. Or the super nerds only like comics. And he says superheroes hurt me. Sometimes I like too much text. Yeah. I haven't read like any, it's weird how you're so into comics, but then like, man, I just haven't been to a comic shop for so long and picked up anything, The one comic I still like, and I assume it's still coming out, like I really dug that Mouse comic that was coming out. I thought that thing was awesome.
Mouse, not Mouse, the
Mouse Card or whatever it's called.
Oh, Mouse Card. Okay.
Yeah, I guess there's a mouse. The Nazi one.
Yeah. The last comic book, and I got to go. I forgot because I haven't been to comic book store. I got to get some more issues. But I'm collecting a book called Paper Girls, which is obviously me. I like the 80s type stuff, but this is like an 80s alien invasion story about a group of girls who have paper routes, and then so it's kind of that same kind of Goonies type thing. I like that one, and I haven't read it lately because I missed an issue, and I'm still trying to track it down. But I guess I'm gonna have to get the trade because I can't find it. And then also DC started putting out like Hanna-Barbera comics.
Oh,
And
cool.
some of them were kind of weird. Like there was one that was Wacky Racers, but it was kind of, the take was kind of like a Mad Max. And it just, to me, it just didn't, I mean, I love Mad Max and I like Wacky Racers, but when they fused them together, it was just, it wasn't either. It was something totally different, which I guess is admirable, but it just didn't speak to me. But one thing they're doing is they're taking like most of the Hanna-Barbera adventure shows and like making like a combined universe where they're all coming together. So it's like Johnny Quest, and then like the Herculoids show up, Space Ghost shows up, and it's called Future Quest.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool, and it's pretty true to the original cartoons too. So,
well, that's cool. Yeah, I always dug Johnny Quest back in the day. I noticed she had like one other comment. It says, I hate seeing some of the new comics where you can't see the badass line work and it's coded in colors and it's so overdone. I hope the overbearing color thing dies. And that's something I totally agree with. I actually hate that, you know, when you got like the colorists that just like are painting the hell out of the line work to where you just can't even tell what's what anymore. I just think it kind of ruins it.
Are you talking more about like color holds or just gaudy color that's just, I don't know.
Well, maybe gaudy color. I remember like I don't know. I mean, I haven't bought any comics. I remember they were doing like a Conan comic for a while, and that thing was just like so painted, but it almost looked okay because it just went like past the line of being painted. But just, you know, I mean, I like color like that's like in the Hellboy comics where it's just kind of more subdued, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes like when you see the Supro stuff and like all the muscles are like being molded by the color and stuff, it's just like too much, I think.
Yeah, the one thing I don't really like that I've seen, I don't know if it was a trend at one point or if it's still going on, but where they just like skip the inking stage and just play with the levels of the pencils. I don't like that at all.
That's actually what they were doing with that Conan comic. All the artwork was just penciled. Yeah. But they just had like the sketches in the back and stuff, you know, of the guys like pencils, and they looked like so good. And I just think, oh man, you know, you almost just wish it was just black and white pencils or something. But let's see, Joe. Somebody mentioned Joe Kubert. I'm not sure. Oh, Joe Kubert mentioned that about the coloring, maybe? I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Oh, Carrie Nord. Yeah, that's who the artist was on Conan. It still was a pretty good book, though. You got to hand it to the guy. And then she says, it's like mostly on the Batman and DC stuff where they go ape on the color and the color effects. Yeah. But I always think like I'm a traditional guy, too. So it's like I always want to see all the line work. You know what I mean? I like indie comics and stuff where, you know, like if I can get a hold of like a, you know, little mini comic from somebody's table, I dig that almost more than like the finished slicker product. But that might just be because I'm just old school or something.
Well, one thing that I noticed that they started doing is because the adult coloring books are so big right now.
Yeah.
They'll take you know, they'll take just the ink work of comic book pages and they'll put it together as a coloring book page for you to color, which is kind of cool because then you get to kind of see that liner away from the coloring and everything.
Mm. That's interesting.
You know, probably nowadays it's so easy. Like, I just know back in the days, if there was something like that was around, it'd be good to like practice coloring on or whatever. But now you can just find that stuff online, probably real easy.
Yeah. Yeah, this adult coloring book thing is weird. Didn't see that one coming.
No.
I mean, I wonder who's buying all these and.
Well, apparently it's more like a therapy thing, kind of, just as a, you know.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I guess if you're maybe not as much of an artist, but, you know, but you want to do something creative and, you know, sit down and color and, you know, whereas me, the therapy is just drawing stuff, you know, or coloring stuff in too. So I can kind of see that.
Yeah.
I had another one was what are some of your organizational tips? Like, what do you do to stay organized, or how do you stay on top of things? Or
God, probably like the worst one to answer this right now because I feel totally unorganized. The thing I go back to constantly, but it kind of fails me and kind of saves me, is just lists. I'm like, I list what I got to do, and I try to keep track of that list, and I try to add to it. And when I'm really good about it, I'm like, it's awesome, because you just, you get up in the morning, you come in here, you just start doing what you got to do, and you start kicking them off. But like where I fail at it is after a while I forget about the list, and I start thinking, I want to do this, and then the next thing you know, I'm like, I haven't turned this one thing in for one guy, and he's mad at me, and somebody else is mad at me, and I haven't done, you know what I mean?
Yeah, prioritizing.
Exactly. Because I'm bad about when I get ahead. Well, I've got time to screw around now, so I'm going to screw around. You know what I mean? I'm going to make that video I wanted to make, or whatever. I'm really bad about. Like I guess it's good because I'm an artist, because I am one of those guys that just I always want to follow my passion. Whatever I'm into right now is like what I want to do. But when you're doing a business, you gotta get all the other stuff done. So I don't know if that's good advice or not.
Yeah.
What about you, dude?
Well, it helps, like you said, when you're. It helps. Well, I would say it helps, but it's difficult when you've got people breathing down your neck, and you've got clients or customers waiting on you and stuff like that. And back when I did more freelance stuff, I definitely remember that. But the good thing about kind of having a day job is that I just go in to work, and because I don't have to take on those freelance stuff, I don't really have to worry about that as much. So as soon as I get home from work, I can start working on my own stuff and only kind of answer to myself, which is nice.
Right.
So, but I definitely remember, it was a lot difficult, and that's probably, in a way, it's almost maybe like a bad thing, because I think I kind of fell out of that. Like I said, now it's just there's so much stuff to do. I've got this list. I'll just tick some things off the list, when I think it would be beneficial to kind of have more order to that list, or prioritize things a little better, or figure out this would work better to get this done at this time. This is more important to do this first because of whatever reason. Just be smarter about it, instead of just having a list that you say, okay, I'm going to do this, or this is, I was just watching one of Gazbot's videos, and he was talking about how he had his pencils and everything. I don't know if his pencils or his roughs on the comic book page, and he had his panels. So he started off picking. He says, well, this is the easiest panel to do, so I'm going to do it first. Or maybe it was, this is the one I want to work on the most. This is what I do first. So that's kind of how I'm operating right now.
Yeah.
When there's probably smarter ways to do it. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I noticed, I was just watching one of Mike Emmeritz's videos, and I haven't been over there for a while, so I kind of was catching up. And I noticed he kind of had a checklist that he was sort of doing at the end of the video of got to exercise, I got to do some writing, got to do some comics. He's working on his stop motion thing, got to do some stop motion. And I thought that was really interesting to sort of have that out there. Is okay, here's all stuff I got to do, and then plus I'm gonna do a little mini vlog about each one. And I don't know, it's kind of a good idea, I guess.
Yeah,
but it's to get that vlog in at the end is the part where I'd be like, oh my god, now I got to edit a video.
Yeah, he's got some really unique ways of working, or just his process. If anyone hasn't watched his videos, he really has, certain things a color coordinate, and just really interesting ways to watch how somebody works, because he's got a very unique approach to things like that.
Yeah. I was just looking back in the thing, and they were kind of talking about Joe Kubert, and Morgan Moore says Joe Kubert said before he passed on in an interview that modern comics started looking all the same due to everybody doing things on the computer. Let's see.
I can kind of see that, but then again, before we were talking about in the 70s and 80s, the limitations of the printing. a lot of that stuff looked kind of the same because of what the tools you had to deal with back then too. It just looked different than it does now. I mean, I would argue that maybe the opposite might be true, because now when you kind of have, you can do anything you want. So, I mean, there is a lot of people, especially like in the 90s. And the problem with the 90s was when computers first came out, it's like, you can do everything. So we're going to do everything that you can possibly do at once. You know? So, but then after a while, they kind of figured out, well, maybe we shouldn't use every single Photoshop filter they have. You know,
Right.
maybe, and then, but because of that, I mean, you can, in any way you can paint, you can make something, you can do that and digitally and make it look like, so you can, if you wanted to, you could do so many different styles, and the printing is good enough that it can represent what you're doing. So I would think, now maybe not everyone does enough, you know, different styles or whatever as far as painting or whatever, but it's certainly possible. You know, whereas before there was just way too many limitations. I mean, obviously you can, if you take like some of the pristine formats or whatever, they could do a little more with color and stuff like that. But for the most part, you just weren't able to do that kind of stuff and not sell it for 75 cents a copy, or 65 or whatever it was back then.
And too, just like the fact that like everything had like an art team on it back then too, you know, like I remember when I finally got to see some like Jack Kirby pencils, you know what I mean? And was just struck by like how like Jack Kirby they were, like his style was like so strong through there, you know? But it's like everything up until then, they had somebody on them, you know, like it was Simon or whoever. It's like, I don't know. I never thought that like he was like so like consistent, I guess. But like once I saw the pencils, I'm just like, wow, this is total Jack Kirby right here, you know?
Yeah.
And like every book had like, you know, that pencil inker team back then. You just couldn't get out of it, I think, anyway. But I don't know. I think too, like by the same token, you know, like you got a ton of guys sort of, you know, like you see guys like drawn, you know, like almost photo referencing like that Poser or whatever you call that program where you can pose people and doing it that way and stuff. And, you know, I don't know. There's like both sides of it, really. I think like the computers have kind of cranked up like the ability to be super original, but then also cranked up the ability to be just like super like everybody else.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, just because, you know, you can do all this stuff, you have all these tools in Photoshop, doesn't mean you have to use them all. That's what a lot of people just starting off, you know.
Somebody says the 90s was a rough time in comics for comic book fans. Yeah. Everybody always busts on the 90s. Like, that's when I was doing comics. He says, all I can say is pouches.
Well, you know what? I can guarantee you.
There was good comics in the 90s.
Well, I can guarantee you that maybe 10 years from now, maybe a little more, you're going to see people wanting to do that style. Just like I'm into seeing like the stuff from the 80s, like I'm so into like, you know, Stranger Things. There's going to be a time where people are going to start, you know, harkening back to the 90s with, you know, because a lot of people, that's when they came up, they started reading comics, a lot of people, because it was huge back then. So people are going to remember that, and people are, you know, going to have a fondness for that. And I think a lot of that's going to come back, even if it's like, I don't want to say ironic, but like when you, if you look at like when Quentin Tarantino does like sort of a grindhouse type, you know, you don't need to do that because we have, you know, we're not shooting like on film now. It doesn't deteriorate like it did. It's not, but even those, that imperfection is what people like. But, you know, same thing with listening to the music on vinyl. It's not as perfect as the digital stuff now, but there's something about listening to something on vinyl. So I think you're gonna, you know, years from now, you're gonna have, or in the not so distant future, you're gonna have people wanting to get back to that kind of 90s style. I can almost guarantee you that'll happen.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it has come around. You know what I mean? It's like back in the 80s when I was a kid, everything just seemed normal. I didn't think there was a style to everything we were doing. You know what I mean? But now there apparently was. You know, you see it at like Stranger Things. You know, there's Rob Liefeld is going to have his day. You just wait.
Well, he's just counting his money from the Deadpool movie, so
Oh, really? You think? Probably.
Well, he owns a portion of that character. I know Marvel owns most of it, but he owns a portion of that character. So.
Wow. Let's see. I was one of the 9 artists that was hired by McGrew Color Crap. Maybe I should have read this before I started saying it. To do the first series of digital trading cards from Marvel, and you are right. They wanted us to use all the filters. That is pretty funny, because I remember I did a cover. It was like this book. It was like this X-Men spinoff from like this book called X-Men Ascani, and it was like one of the first like digitally colored comics. I don't know if it was the first, you know what I mean? But it was like, I remember the editor talking to me about it and telling me that they have this new way that they're going to color this thing. So like I just penciled it and just turn in the pencils. We're going to do like something new with this, and I don't know. All they did was really they just turned my gray pencil lead like red. That was like the whole extent of coloring it.
Turned it red.
Yeah, they turned it kind of like this pinkish red look, and that's what it was. But it actually came out all right. If somebody would have tried to really color it like an Image comic, that would have just wrecked it. But, I don't know. It's just weird to think back, because I mean it was just such a like that whole, I don't even know what you call those gradated colored dots that were on all the coloring back then. I
just call them halftone dots, even though they're not all halftones. I'm sure there's I forgot. I think there's more of a technical term for it, but
right. But that was like the technology for comics, and like everybody in comics like hated them. You know what I mean? We were all just desperate for something to like come along or replace it. So it's kind of funny that now people look back and they want that. Says I hated it. Sometimes it would take 20 minutes for a filter to run, only to find out it didn't work. That sucks. I was super late to like getting on the computers though. By the time I got on, like Photoshop was rocking and coloring was probably easy. So then Rob Liefeld, oh my God, his anatomy. It's coming back. He's probably gonna have an anatomy book like 2040.
But you know what? I mean, some of the stuff that they were doing in the 90s, you can almost, and hopefully this isn't too blasphemous, but you can almost compare it to like Kirby.
Oh,
it was
man.
very bombastic. It was very
leaving the show.
Yeah, well,
we're gonna get hate, dude. Go ahead with what you're saying.
But it was just because when you look at Kirby stuff, there's just so much going on, and there's like every page there's explosions, and it's so larger than life. And I think that, and so not the look of it, but the feeling of it, and a lot of that was big in the 90s with these huge like splash pages that you would fold out, like these centerfold things that would fold out like 3 or 4 times, and all this stuff. Which, I mean, that's what I dug about the 90s. Was like these huge things, but there was like almost like no room for breathing. Everything was like that. If you have that. If you have something like these giant splash pages, that's awesome. But there's such a thing as too much. It seemed like every single page was like that. So, but
yeah, I know it is kind of weird because there is a chance that like something like that would happen, and I mean, I have a hard time like comparing Liefeld to Kirby, but it's like. I mean, there's other guys from the 90s, though, that I really dug that, like Simon Bisley is a good example, or like Sam Keith. Both those guys, totally overblown, wacko muscles that, I mean, Bisley, he's more, I mean, I was going to say that don't work, but I almost think that like his stuff would work. But, and, it looks good anyway, or it looked good back then. I was all into it. I mean, Sam Keith, you never hear anybody bitching about him. I think people still love him, don't they?
Yeah.
So. And then somebody says, "Oh, geez, Kirby was blocky, but Captain America didn't have huge breasts." One person says in the art book there will be a no foot section, no feet section. And AC Brown says there's some styles like Aeon Flux, which I agree. I love that look. That cartoon and stuff.
I love that cartoon, but it was kind of
weird.
Well, I don't know. It was like in some ways it was kind of like ugly looking, but it was. I don't.
What's ugly about a fly crawling across your eyeball?
Well, yeah, okay. But I did love that cartoon,
Yeah.
It was that like Liquid Television, or was that? It was. I know it was on MTV, right?
Yeah. I think like where I got it, I think I picked up like a videotape at a con or something.
Yeah.
I wasn't watching it, but I think it was on MTV originally. Aeon Flux was like over animated IDK. It was uncomfortable. So, I guess you didn't dig it, but I think didn't they make like two? I think they made a bunch of short series, and then they like made like longer ones, which I didn't like as well as just the short weird ones.
Yeah, I'm trying to. It's so long ago. I'll have to kind of revisit that, but.
I haven't thought of that in forever.
And then there was they had like a lot of those kind of cartoons back there that were sort of geared more towards adults. Like I know they did the Spawn cartoon.
Yeah, that's true.
And they did a Max cartoon too. That I'll have to watch. Where did that? I'm trying to remember where that aired. Was that on like a?
I don't know. I think it was MTV though.
Was it?
But like once again, that was just like a tape I got somewhere. But I'm pretty sure it was like MTV. And I think it was like what you said, Liquid Television or something. Now all the cartoons are like, like you were saying, like they're for adults, but it's like the humor, Adult Swim, and it's all more adult oriented, I guess. Yeah, somebody says MTV. Adam Moore says it. So Scott, have you ever seen the Japanese Spider-Man TV show from the 70s with the mech?
I've seen. I haven't sit down and like watched a whole episode, but I have seen clips of it. It's pretty crazy. But I remember watching the 70s, just the American 70s Spider-Man. There's so many versions of Spider-Man out there. It's crazy. Like, because there was the Japanese one, and then there was the Electric Company had a Spider-Man that they used to do. And then there was the 70s, or a few 70s Spider-Man. But it just nothing really other than, and then of course you had the cartoons. You had that 60s Spider-Man cartoon, and then you had like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And so Spider-Man was definitely out there, but it's weird how long it took for that to kind of come out where they could make a halfway decent, version of it, like when, Raimi did his Spider-Man.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that
like
TV
no
show
one could ever really do a superhero other than Superman and Batman, and then finally eventually they cracked the code, and now that's all that's out there is superhero movies. So.
I know. I know. I remember like the Tim Burton Batman and just being like, I mean, it just was like, there's just no way it's going to work because nobody can do, any kind of superhero movie. Every superhero movie sucks, And then, like I thought it was good. I loved it back then,
Yeah, my issue kind of back then with that movie was that it just seemed like it was very little about Batman. It was definitely more about focused on the Joker and everything, which I like the Joker, but I think that's why I like Batman Begins so much, because it was the first like Batman movie where it was actually a story about Batman. And that's why otherwise, I would have probably not as. I probably wouldn't have enjoyed the Dark Knight as much, because a lot of that was more of a Joker story. But having them finally tell an actual Batman story, it was fine. Okay, finally they gave us Batman, his origin, and they've told a good Batman story. Now we can focus on like more villain centric stuff, So
yeah, totally. I like that one a lot. The first Batman, the Chris Nolan one.
Yeah.
So.
And it wasn't like a big blockbuster, really. It was kind of like I don't know if it was one of those that had to go to DVD to kind of find its audience, but I enjoyed it like the first time I saw it, but it didn't, and I could be remembering wrong, but it just didn't seem to, like, it was almost like, well, did it do good enough for us to make a sequel? I don't know, but
yeah, totally. I guess we didn't have a topic. We got off on talking about movies, which was everyone started the show. We were going to try not to do that.
Oh yeah, Morgan Morris's Spider-Ham. That was another version of Spider. Yeah, I remember that, the Spider-Ham comics. There was the whole like Star Comics that the kids. Yeah, there were a lot of different like offshoot like Spider. They had like remember that was right around the time where we also had like the new universe, Marvel's new universe, and you had like Epic Comics and
You mean like that was like back in the 70s, that same Epic Comics line, or because I don't remember Spider-Ham.
Spider-Ham, that was Star Comics. I forgot what other titles they had, but it was more like it's almost like Marvel's version of Archie Comics, kind of.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But it was like Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham.
Peter Porker. That was like the whole idea for the whole thing. Somebody said Peter Porker, Spider-Ham.
So I don't know, we're starting to get off on tangents. I don't know. Is there anyone else that has anything else important that they want us to talk about? Because it's kind of been, again, it's sort of like a free-form show, but it's fun to do this. Hopefully next week we'll have everyone back together again, and we'll have a little more of a topic and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll get Kevin back out of jail. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. We partied way too much on his birthday.
Right.
All right. Well, anyway, so yeah, I guess we'll sort of wrap it up. So, anyway, speaking of Kevin, you can find him at kevincross.net. And I think we've got links. There's links in the descriptions of where you can find everyone. Jeff, where can they find you?
JeffLafferty.net is my website. You can find everything I'm about there. It leads to my YouTube channel and all that. Also, I wanted to tell you guys about the mailing list. Link to the mailing list is down below, and it's just an easy way to keep up with the show. And I don't spam you guys. I just send a notification like 10 minutes before the show comes. So it's like a really good way to catch the live show in case you're having a hard time doing that. And sign up. So we got a couple sign-ups last week, so that's cool. Things growing. The show's getting big, man.
Yeah, so I'm Scott Circlin. You're on my channel, so you know where to find me here. There's also a link. You can find my website. And actually, I have updated some of my my Store and Be store. Go check it out. Not even, don't necessarily have to buy anything, but just because I spent a lot of time on it, so I think I did a really good job of getting some really good pictures. So if you're thinking about opening an online store, and I'm gonna talk about more of this later, but go check it out. It might give you some ideas of how to present your artwork and things like that. But anyway, check that out. That's on my website. You can find me pretty much anywhere on the internet at CircWorks. So. We'll see you guys next week. Hopefully all three of us.
See you guys.
Later.